We're back from a break, and we're here with a special guest to dissect the entirety of the HBO action drama The Last of Us, plus the 3 episodes of The Mandalorian, which is catching some heat from fans. Those shows, and some brief ideas on Perry Mason's return at the tail end. Let's go for it.
Alabama take projection.
Welcome to Taking It Down, where we cordially unpack TV and film for our busy Alabama people who are also obsessed with television and movies as much as we are. I'm Blaine Duncan, one of the hosts. Taking It Down exists because I thoroughly enjoy dissecting why I like what I like and why I dislike what I dislike when it comes to TV, movies, sometimes books and music. I have an English degree, and I'm also a teacher, so I try my best to pair those together to offer insight worthy of your time, because we know you're probably too busy to read everything out there. Plus, I was once your classic 80s and 90s kid who grew up in front of a television set and was thrilled to visit the movie theater for entertainment. Luckily, my ideas aren't the only set of viewpoints on the podcast every week. As with me are always these three. Adam Morrow, who's an erudite, traveling, and studio musician with a penchant for fine literature. Donovan Reinwald, a media specialist with encyclopedic knowledge on film and a lot more. And then there's Natalie Morrow, the first person to ask about fantasy, sci-fi, comics, trashy reality TV, and any Beyonce album. From us, you get the obvious, but you also get the obscure. So, no Adam this week. Let me introduce our host, part of the weekly Taking It Down crew. He warned us 5 weeks ago about a run on Banks. It's Donovan Reinwald. Tried to tell y'all.
And you didn't listen.
I know. I never do. Now look at me. Next, she's limited on time this week because she's got to be in New York for a prominent arrest on Tuesday. It's Natalie Morrow.
Man, this is it's gonna be a weird week, guys.
We have a very special guest this week. He is both the host of the widely popular podcast This Song Sucks, and he is also the reason for inflation. Here he is, Josh Kavanaugh.
I have a feeling that Donovan would argue with the qualifier very special.
You are a very special guest to me because I can finally do my impression of you, which is, these are the math reasons this song sucks.
Hey, I dig that shit.
No, it's funny. It is funny.
It's interesting. Yes, if you don't know, the Alabama Take, we produce several podcasts in affiliation with several of our friends and cohorts. This Song Sucks. Find it, listen to it, and you'll hear more of Josh and his very specific reasons on why a song sucks. You'll learn something. That's the thing. We've roped Josh in because he is our ringer for The Last of Us. That's where we're going to begin.
Oh, geez.
When this show started, you messaged me and said, if you guys talk about The Last of Us, I've actually played the game. I'm going to watch the show. And so here we are. Let's just start there with the game. Because I don't think any of us have played it. I'm barely aware of it.
I don't own a PlayStation.
Yeah, and I haven't owned a PlayStation in years. And the...
I just have stuff to do.
Exactly. There's that too. But the show, when it came out, that's when I became, of course, aware of it. I might have been aware of the game when it was popular as a game by itself. What was that, 2013?
Yeah, it was like 2013 or 14 maybe. I didn't play it until it was like, I'm a cheapskate. I wait for it to be $10.
Oh, okay. So the popularity, you knew about the popularity.
I knew about it, but then the fortunate thing is the second one had just come out, so the first one was like on sale, so I just ripped through both of them like immediately.
Well, that's my first question. Did they know it was going to be a 2-part game from the start?
I don't know the answer to that, but I mean, as for those who've watched the entire TV series, it certainly leaves it wide open for more. But I don't know if they intended to do that from the start. I mean, these are the brilliant guys that brought you Drake Uncharted and Crash Bandicoot. Okay.
Wait, was Crash Bandicoot Naughty Dog?
I think so, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I thought it was. I could be wrong.
No, you might be right about that. They definitely did Uncharted.
The game, you played it. I've got to be honest. I'm old. I've got to come clean on my age. I'm old, and I don't play games anymore. Like, How does what I see on HBO week to week translate from a game? You know, like, is that a lot of cutscenes?
Yeah, I mean, like most video games of this type, it's like a survival horror would be like the genre of the game, where it's all about collecting limited resources to make your way through some sort of zombies or whatever. I think at the time when the game came out, it was sort of lauded for its narrative structure. The narrative is pretty much a carbon copy for the TV series from the game. A lot of actual shot for shot almost remakes, like the opening sequence in the first episode is, other than following his daughter's like day beforehand, like that whole action sequence of them escaping in the truck, the daughter getting shot by the army officer or whatever, it's pretty much the exact same. And there's other instances throughout the series of that happening. But what I will say, and they kind of capture it in the television show itself, but you know, when you're playing a game, a lot of it is I'm sneaking around, trying to fight and avoid zombies or humans, collecting resources, blah, blah, blah. One of the things that the video game had an advantage over is all this sort of in-between time. Like when you're just walking around exploring, it's just mostly Joel and Ellie, and there's all these little conversations that just kind of come up. And they captured some of that in the series, like her little joke book, the pun book. And she like will frequently just pull that out as you're going through the levels and areas of the game, and it's exactly how it was in the game for the TV series. But a lot of that connection, which is like the heart of the story between Joel and Ellie, there's just all this little tidbit development of the characters that you get from those moments in the game that aren't big story breaks with a cutscene, like you mentioned.
Are you a big fan of the game? Did you love it, or one of your favorites or something?
Yeah, I mean, well, especially having the the fortunate kind of situation that I described where I just played the first and second one. I mean, the second one is really elevated, I think, just not only the genre that it's within, but just video game storytelling in general. And so I'm actually very excited to see how they handle that in a second season. Hopefully, I'm hoping just another season. You know, I don't need this thing to get drawn out like so many other TV series do unnecessarily.
Yeah, news this week came out that they were going to do at least 2 more seasons, so they're going to chop it up, and I was not a fan of that.
Well, it makes, I'm still hopeful because it makes sense because of the way the story is set up in the second game. It could feasibly be stretched over 16 episodes or however many. They did 9 this season, right?
That's right.
Yeah, something in that ballpark. There's enough meat on that narrative bone for them to get, especially considering the sort of the real deviation. Biggest one in the game is the story of Bill and Frank.
We lovingly call him Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
Donovan can't get it right, so we just have to stick with what Donovan says.
It was Bill and Ted, and then Bill and Fred.
What I thought they did really cleverly by completely sort of making up that story just for the TV series. You encounter Bill, it's just very like you're sneaking into this town, it's all booby trapped. It wasn't like this little secluded sort of house in the middle of nowhere with a fence like it's portrayed in the show. He's like created this weird urban claustrophobic landscape that you're having to get through where there's tripwires and bombs everywhere. And, you know, you can't really do that and tell like a story that's interesting in a television show. So just completely removing that and really hitting the narrative point that Bill is the guy who gets Joel and Ellie the car. You know, that's sort of the main narrative thrust for him in the game. And there are those bits of him where you find little notes and have little side conversations that you learn about Frank. But it's just,
right.
Yeah. And Hayden and I were talking about it after that episode came out. We're just floored, I think, like everybody was by that episode.
Hayden, co-host of This Song Sucks?
Yes. Co-host of This Song Sucks, Hayden Crawford, is also a huge fan of the video games as well.
I think my last question about the game, and then we'll move into the actual series. Is it hard? because if the game's hard, I will throw the controller and never play it again. So I'm thinking about playing this one.
I think I'd have to remember, but I think it does have a difficulty slider to where enemies aren't quite as hard, and it's more of
Put that baby on easy.
Yeah, put it on easy. They call that story mode.
I was gonna say Blaine's just here for the narrative.
Yeah. Well,
when I play Mad, I play against
Sorry.
I set on player 2, so it's not even a computer playing me. It's just the controller sitting there with no one.
it's just a.
That's how easy I want it.
Dead people.
There were two other like little aspects about the game that I kind of wanted to talk about, and this is something but there's two like big aspects of the game that are just not a part of the TV series, and that's one, the existence of all the spores that you have to avoid in the game. Like there's these areas that are so infective, you go underground, and Joel has to wear a gas mask,
Right.
and Ellie doesn't. And I think that was kind of an interesting mechanic that they did in the game to sort of slightly subvert that typical violent male hero protecting the damsel in distress, because in those situations she has advantages that he doesn't. And you have those episodes, the episode toward the end where Joel's injured and Ellie has to take care of him, and that's a huge kind of similar situation. But that's especially when they're in Boston trying to leave, that's sort of a really early device they use to make Ellie more than just a useless person you're supposed to protect. But on the flip side of that too, there's a lot of times in the game where Ellie can't swim is a large plot point, and a lot of escaping and getting through the ruins of Boston are having to go through flooded areas, and so Ellie has to just basically ride on Joel's back. And I would actually, my recollection is that a lot of the interesting conversations that you have, and that's kind of in between times, is when she's either on his back or she's like floating on like a wooden pallet and he's pushing her along, like those little tidbits of conversation, because that's really the only time in the games where she is truly 100% vulnerable, is when you're having to swim around. And that was actually something too, when they make it to the Firefly Hospital, in the game, they don't get approached by soldiers and knocked out like they show. You're escaping through this tunnel and she almost drowns. And like I think the soldiers are like come up on you while you're trying to revive her after she has drowned almost.
Huh. So let's segue into the show itself. We're going to spoil the whole show. We already kind of sort of done that with talking about the game a little. So if you haven't seen all 9 episodes of the first season, just beware. Here we go. We'll stick with Josh for just a second. What did you think of the show? How did you feel like it translated? Is there you brought up some things that were different. Is there anything you thought different in a bad way or good way?
I think every choice that they made, or pretty much every choice they made to deviate from the exact narrative of the game, was a good choice. Mostly just because controlling a character within the game world is a different way to push a narrative forward, because there's times when there's no story. You're just trying to survive, and it's purely a video game mechanic. And like I said, the Frank and Bill episode where that story was pretty just, all the details of it anyway, made up from whole cloth. I don't know about y'all, but me and Lindsay, when we watched it, just fucking were bawling afterwards. I mean, it's a very emotionally impactful. And then at times when they do adhere to the game exactly like in that opening sequence, not the opening sequence in the TV show, but when he's with Tommy and his daughter. I mean, I remember watching that the first time in the video game and being floored by it. And I think it's a credit to the showrunners and the show creators that it was equally as impactful emotionally watching it in the TV series, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's in my mind, the adherence to the game, which can kind of be a little pedantic at times in video game adaptations, the times when they did that and the times when they deviated, I think were equally well done.
We were kind of divided on the Bill and Ted episode, as we've come to call it. I think Natalie found it a bit of a drag.
Oh, I find most of this show a bit of a drag.
Yeah. Donovan and I were kind of, he and I went back and forth on, this was good, this was okay, only okay. But his wife, Donovan's wife, Dr. Beth, she openly wept, right?
She literally, I'm not kidding, like when I say 20 minutes, I mean 20 minutes of crying.
Yeah. Yeah, they did add some things to the show, and I understood where it was coming from. But I'll admit, by the end of the 9th episode, I was really compelled by the entire thing. I keep a list of things I watch and use that list at the end of the year to jot notes on the Alabama Take, and this one is high up on that list, very high on what I've watched so far as a show. I just thought I thought it presented a moral quandary that was interesting enough for the kind of show that it is, and then knowing it's based on a game too, I think doesn't take away from it or propel it any higher. I just thought it was good on its own merits.
I'm a damn sucker because there are 3 scenes that really got me, and one's from the 8th episode.
Okay, yeah,
At the end of the 8th episode, when he catches Ellie and calls her baby girl for the first time, and it's it's telegraphed like it's a big moment, and yet it's still I don't know. I think he really sold it, and Bella Ramsey really sold it.
Yeah, I gasped. In my own little, I guess, internal monologue, gasped. I did. I thought it was great.
Episode 9, a lot of nice stuff. And I mean, I think, interestingly enough, episode 9, when Joel goes on his rampage, that was the only time that the show felt like a video game to me. I think we've all kind of, as we've been discussing this, found like moments where it was like, oh, this is a video game. Like, this isn't a show anymore. This was the first time it really happened to me. When Ellie says to Joel, I'm just a sucker for this. I don't know why. Ellie says to Joel, time heals all wounds, and he looks at her and says, it wasn't time that did it. They had built up enough of like a connection and a rapport at that point that it really sold me on it. And then so I totally believe that like Joel is going to do anything possible to save Ellie. And then I thought the ending was really abrupt, and I liked that. So overall, thumbs up.
Yeah. All right, Natalie, you can explain why it was a piece of shit.
God, I mean, y'all are either getting real soft in your old age, or there's something wrong with me. Like, maybe I'm broken.
Both.
Because
Could be
I'm
both.
not getting it. I mean, yeah, that's probably true. That's probably fair. But, like, I don't get there. Kim, listen, I was out a few episodes ago. I decided this isn't doing anything for me. I'm out. And then Adam left town for a couple weeks, and I was bored, so I watched it, and I finished it. And it's still just not it. Like, I don't get it. I don't see the chemistry between the two. I actually went back and watched interviews with Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. And I decided to go back and watch the show because those two people have great chemistry. I don't buy the chemistry between Joel and Ellie, though. Like, I still don't see it. And I think it's so video gamey to me. Maybe if they had slowed it down, maybe if they had split this season in half and made this story 2 seasons, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. But it felt like every single episode was just, okay, this is a cutscene, and it was just too obvious for me. There were not enough lines were blurred between video game and television show. Just didn't work for me.
That's interesting.
No emotion.
That's an interesting. That's one of the reasons I want to come talk to y'all, because I was interested in the perspective of somebody who is just watching the show and has never played the game. Because so like my opinion of that Joel Ellie relationship is heavily colored by playing the 2 games, and so I could totally see what you're saying, that out of the context of the game, which again, if you say slow it down, which is what the game does, like I said, they're just sitting there walking through all this stuff, and you're building these little pieces of the character as you go through, and without having that, I could see that maybe it would feel a little more contrived, and that perhaps the people that wrote it and decided to condense it into 9 episodes were kind of relying on that presupposed sort of bias of knowing it from the game for the people that were watching it on TV.
Everything hinges on how much you believe their time off screen built up to something, and I think that's going to rely on Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Man, I was sold on her. I was very neutral on her casting. I didn't care either way. I knew she was probably pretty good, or she wouldn't have gotten the job. But then I think it was around episode 6 or 7. She did. I think it was the episode with her and her friend Riley, her friend / love interest. She does something with her eyes in a couple of those episodes after that one, where it's like she's funny and caring, but also trying to be scared, tough, angsty teenager. And I've seen that in the eye, and every day, Monday through Friday, in the eyes of certain people. And it's just like, oh, okay, she's got it. She can play anything. And I was curious if she could play caring and like reciprocating care. I was curious if she could do that, because in the first couple episodes she's got to be tough and fuck you, and lots of fuck yous between her and Joel in those first 2 or 3 episodes. And I was thinking, well, I don't know if she can turn on the switch to being like, that's my dad kind of thing, but I bought it. And I don't think another actor could have done that. So I might have been in the camp with Natalie had it been someone without the skill that she's got.
I'm not even like I know these 2 actors are great actors. I'm not saying that their performance was bad.
Yeah.
I'm saying what they had to perform wasn't good enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
For
I
me.
get that. No, I get
Put that
that.
little asterisk on there. It clearly worked for most people on the planet. So
Yeah. It would be, if you do another episode, you probably will have haters coming on saying it's dragging its feet or something. So, but then that could resolve an issue or two for people like you who couldn't quite buy into it.
I mean, to slow it down in the proper context that it needed to be in may have made the show unwatchable.
Yeah,
it's like the difference between watching the movie theater cut of The Fellowship of the Ring and like the director's uncut 5-hour. Like nobody can
which
sit
is
through that.
the best. Hold on.
See, Natalie likes that. She wants the expanded building. Like, yeah, okay, it adds up for her.
But would you have wanted that expanded building in The Fellowship of the Ring had you not read the books?
Yeah, totally.
Any issues with the notion of Joel being able to love and be sweet and kind and care, yet kill ruthlessly?
No. Isn't that the reason why you kill ruthlessly? Is because you care for somebody?
Well, no, I just seen it pop up on the internet, and I was just curious what y'all thought. No, I was sold, because when it was happening, I was like, hell yes, I'd do that for my daughter. Mm-hmm. I was like, hell yes, yeah. I don't care if she could save a whole galaxy of people. You're not going to harm her, and I was sold on that. The thing I wasn't sold on in the finale was that he lied about it. Like that, to me, that's the worst sin of his character, not the killing, not the ruthlessness. It's it's one of those narrative techniques where you feel like just tell the truth and you won't have problems down the road. And I get that people do that, but you've seen movies and shows where you like, if you'll just admit this one thing or explain it kind of well, you don't have any more conflict for the rest of the show.
Well,
I totally bought him lying.
You did?
Yeah, especially after Bella Ramsey's character is like, it can't all have been for nothing. He knows that she would not approve of what he did. And he can't face that again. Risk losing the love.
Yeah, that's exactly how I saw it, and that's kind of how it was portrayed in the game as well, is that he's so closed off, right, because of the death of his daughter, that he's finally let himself be vulnerable and let another person in who, even aside from the fact that she's around the same age as his daughter when she was killed, and there's that sort of ingrained dynamic because of that, he responds in a way that an emotionally stunted person would, like, oh shit, I have this now, and I have to do whatever it takes to not lose it, or I'm going to be completely crushed. And
yeah, it's a zero-sum game for Joel. It's all or nothing.
Okay.
And it's also a very useful plot device for the second game as well.
Yeah, that's the thing, I guess.
And I did want to say one thing too about like the violence, him just like blasting through all these people in that hospital scene at the end. And you see him obviously in the episode where they get, I think is it Kansas City that they set it in?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's Pittsburgh in the original game, which kind of makes more sense to me that Pittsburgh would be a little more hostile to human beings than Kansas City.
There went our listeners from Pittsburgh. They just hit delete.
Yeah. The game, in the way that like it animates and your choice as to whether to avoid killing humans or not, it makes the weight of the violence that you commit in that game. The developers did a really good job of adding that emotional weight, even though it's a nameless, faceless human character. All you know is that they're out to get you. The sound design, the animations, all of it, it adds an emotional weight to where you're not just killing people just to protect someone. You're getting like a little emotional notch on your belt every time you kill somebody. And I'm not entirely sure that the TV series did as equally as a good job of that, especially in that last scene where he's just mowing people down in the hospital.
I think that's what made it feel very much like a video game to me, where it's like, okay, this is the... Whereas before they'd actually done a pretty good... I mean, the clickers are, just monsters, but they'd actually done a pretty good job of, like, humanizing everybody in the show. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I guess they maybe figured, like, I've already done the work of humanizing the Fireflies, of humanizing Marlene. Like, it's up to you, the viewer, to make that connection. But yeah, I agree with you. It was all right.
Like they did, like the kid in the convenience store that sneaks up on him and he ends up killing. Mm-hmm. That was a pretty good example of that. But it's like when you're, again, I'm going off of memory from a couple of years ago, but like when you're killing all these Fireflies in the hospital, you shoot one of their guys and you hear the other people in the room being like, "Oh, we're gonna get you, motherfucker!" Like they're angry that you killed their friend, right? And so it's just these little details like that make it. I mean, it's Natalie's complaint was that the hospital was the video game portion of the TV series, but the hospital was probably, because of those, you're just killing people so frequently in that portion of it, that the sort of toll piles up on you, and it ends up being less video game like in the actual video game.
Wow, interesting. There is just a stellar example of acting from Pedro Pascal when he shoots the doctor, the surgeon, where you can tell he's not openly weeping or crying or anything. Maybe he is a little, but you can see it in his face, like, I don't want to have to do this, but I'll do anything. I mean, it's all right there. The one thing I think that a good argument might be is, could it have used a little bit of flashback, or in that first episode or second episode somewhere where you see what he and Tommy actually did, maybe? But then, they played it subtly, which I appreciate that too. It's like, we will just reference it that Joel was damn near evil to survive, understandably, but he was scary to survive, and I don't know, they played it nice, and of course that could come out in the second season or something.
This is apropos of nothing really, but just a question for Josh is, did they have the Riley flashback in the game?
Yes, but it was additional content. It wasn't part of the original game.
Interesting. So like DLC or something like that?
Yeah, most people that experienced that would have, in fact, it doesn't integrate it into the normal part of the story. It's like a different menu that you have to go into. So most of the people that play that would have played the entire game ahead of time.
Okay.
And so you're just getting that pure flashback. And I think that particular episode, the way they did it was, again, a good adaptation, because it is almost an entirely narrative portion. Like you do a little more like you're attacked by a horde of zombies and you're trying to escape and like kill them to make it, a video game. Whereas in the television show, it's just like a single zombie finds them, right? But again, that little extra DLC was almost entirely narrative. And so I'm actually really glad they included it in the series, because
Me
I think
too,
it really
just 'cause,
fleshes out her character a lot more.
Yeah, I think it was one of the standout episodes.
Yeah.
I have another question for Josh. Sorry.
Uh-oh.
No, it's relevant. It's relevant. I was just curious because maybe you don't know, because this is, I guess, not necessarily gameplay, but were people as homophobic about the game when it came out as they are about the television show, like reviews?
I don't remember it being as such, because again, the sort of homosexual relationships that are in the game, like Bill and Frank, you don't know that unless you're the kind of person like me who digs around every corner of every empty house to find little notes and stuff. Like, it wasn't up front. Like, you could have missed it almost entirely if you weren't looking. And then, of course, the story between Riley and Ellie is was extra content. So the game had probably been out by a year. I think the reaction to what's happening in the second game, as far as like homophobia and misogyny, was way worse than any reaction from the first game. So I don't really want to spoil that, but I'm sure there was. I play a fair amount of games, but I wouldn't say I'm tapped into the gamer culture. So when that kind of stuff happens, it usually has to be something that bubbles up from like, CNN did an article or something, and some boomer shared it on Facebook or something, or Hayden tells me. Hayden's a lot more connected to internet stuff. So
Hayden is prone to dig around in YouTube comments.
yes, that is his main
Let's just say
function
that.
on our
That's his
podcast.
function. Speaking of digging around YouTube comments, let's take a break, and I bet there will be an ad for This Song Sucks, so you can find out more from Josh. And what you'll hear from us on the other side is Mandalorian talk and maybe a bit of Perry Mason. The title says it all. The podcast, This Song Sucks. Hosts Josh Kavanaugh and Hayden Crawford are joined by a musician pal each month as they explain, analyze, and dog on the music they hate. Did they touch a nerve? Hear them out. Easily the most well-researched and carefully reasoned podcast on why that song sucks. Subscribe in your favorite podcast app or find it on the AlabamaTake.com each second Thursday of the month. Okay, we're back with this week's show. Let's talk Mandalorian. Mandalorian has 3 episodes up so far, weekly dish as they've usually done on Disney+. This 3rd episode, I've noticed, internet, message board, not big fans, but critics were. Kind of the divide that sometimes happens where you get fans hating it and critics loving it. We're going to spoil it, by the way, people, if you're listening. Let's just go around. We can start with that 3rd episode, or you can talk about the first 2. First 2 were relatively standard Mandalorian adventure, episodic kind of thing. I don't think there's a lot to say about it. But feel free. Where were you in the 3rd episode?
My only big comments on the first 2 episodes are Katie Sackhoff's character is Bo-Katan, right?
Yes, sir.
Did she just sit on that damn throne all day?
Wouldn't you?
It's got a toilet on it, so you can just.
This is a character after Natalie's heart, just sitting around angry when anyone stops by.
Just on a big chair in a dark hall.
What the fuck are you doing here?
But yeah, I agree with you. Those first 2 episodes were fine. Nothing really besides the throne. Nothing really stands out of them to me. It was kind of interesting watching this right after watching The Last of Us, because it's like, I feel like I know Pedro Pascal's voice very well now. But like, it's just a different kind of acting. But that 3rd episode, I think how I really end up feeling about it is going to depend on what they do with it. Is it just... because they kind of just dropped it in the middle of an episode, sort of like they did with Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian, where they just put 2-ish episodes of The Mandalorian in the middle of Book of Boba Fett. And then, not that you can't have narrative digressions or you can't deepen your universe or anything like that, but it just felt like another show got dropped into The Mandalorian. Now, I thought that show was decent. I thought that other show was pretty good. I liked all the actors in it, and it was kind of an interesting, like if you're going with the Star Wars logic, it's kind of interesting thought, right? Like, what do you do with all the ex-Imperials? But then it was so bookended by just standard Mandalorian stuff. It was kind of weird.
Yeah. Very, very weird, man.
Just reminding you that, hey, you're watching The Mandalorian, not another Disney Plus Star Wars show that we're starting.
But that was the best part about Boba Fett, though.
Yeah.
Was it just turned into The Mandalorian.
Oh,
Wait.
yeah, that's when it kept me watching.
I kind of stopped watching Boba Fett in like episode 3 or 4. Was there like important narrative parts from The Mandalorian that I'm missing because of that?
Yeah, they
It just
reunite
becomes
Grogu.
Mandalorian.
Does it explain how Grogu's just back all of a sudden?
Yeah, yeah.
What the fuck?
Exactly.
Come on. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I think
God.
it's episodes. It's either episode 7 and 8 or 8 and 9. You should watch those because they're just Mandalorian episodes.
Because
that's all they are.
Lindsay and I were just like, so are they going to explain like why Grogu's back? And I'm like,
No, they
I don't
do.
know. I figured that they would. I was hoping that we're going to get at least
Yeah.
one more episode of CGI Mark Hamill out of this, you know.
No, you do
do.
in Book of Boba Fett.
So we have to, God, fuck me.
Yeah.
Jesus.
And it's not only that, they put two important things in the Book of Boba Fett. Not just Grogu being back, but him being an apostate. That him being declared apostate happens in the Book of Boba Fett. So, like, if you haven't seen it, the start of this season makes no sense.
And if you like Luke Skywalker, you get more of him and the...
Ashoka?
How do
Yes.
you say her name?
Yeah,
She makes
she's
a
going to
big-
get her own show too, right?
Right,
Obviously.
and she gets her big kind of backdoor pilot in Book of Boba Fett, too.
I didn't have a
Yeah.
problem with Book of Boba Fett. I just kind of got bored of it and stopped watching
Well,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
it
'cause
was not very
Because
good.
it wasn't good.
But then you get this episode 7 or 8, or 8 or 9, somebody will correct me, and you get those two, and they're really good, and then that finale is action-packed at least, so...
I tell you,
mods.
if this turns into like a Marvel shit where I gotta watch a dozen movies to know what the fuck's
It
going
is.
on anything, I
It
might have
is.
to check out.
Yeah.
Well, bye.
Natalie will show you the door. All right, Natalie, where are you with Mandalorian episodes 1 through 3 of this season?
I thought episode 1 was fine. I thought it was like a good introduction to what we're potentially going to be doing this season. I thought episode 2 was boring. It was really weird. There was too much time where it was just Mando with Grogu and just Bo-Katan with Grogu, where it was just really awkward dialogue where it's like, this person is just alone talking. And it was, I don't know, it was just really weird. I don't know. And then episode 3, the way that I feel about it is that I haven't watched it yet, but I'm really excited because you guys seem to hate it. No,
Well-
I don't care if I get spoiled on things. I look for spoilers. So.
Okay, that's right. Well, I'll just say, and I'll let Josh come in and wrap a little bit of discussion about episode 3. If you liked Andor, I guess you all watched Andor, am I right?
I've watched
We're
the first
working through it
episode.
right now.
Yeah.
Oh man, Josh, you got to finish it.
Oh wait,
Man.
I think we will. We're intrigued.
Yeah, well, if you liked the intricacies and the granular shit of Andor, you're gonna really like the 3rd episode of Mandalorian. And to me, this is what a Star Wars show can do. And I've said it on this podcast before, that if you're going to do 8 episodes, 10 episodes of something in a Star Wars universe, this is what you can do. You can zoom in on these cities, or you can zoom in on the fact that this is how a lightsaber is built, or something kind of weird and like interesting that you wanted to know as a kid and you never got the opportunity because a movie can only be 2 hours. And that's what they're doing here. And is it a little? It's just weird. I don't think it's ever boring. It's just I never was like, oh goddamn, I'm gonna fast forward through this. I was thinking, why am I spending so much time with this cat? But
Like an actual cat?
no, it's
Is
not
this
an
a
actual-
cat story?
Like, dude. No, there's no animals in this one that I
He's a
know of, except for the
hiplingo.
fish people.
He's a hep
The
cat,
fish-
Mandalorian.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I actually thought the second episode's my favorite so far because it is the most Star Wars.
Sorry.
And
It's Star
I'll
Wars.
tell you why. I mean, bad dialogue is Star Wars. I'm sorry. That's just
true.
what it is.
That's true. You're right.
And I was actually in my mind they were kind of setting up his whole, exploration and journey of the planet as like maybe a multi episode thing. And so I was kind of disappointed that they just got it all in one episode. The idea of exploring the planet being cut off, making both him and Grogu kind of vulnerable. I'm not sure we needed the random droid that he picked up from Amy Sedaris. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's another thing. Any episode with Amy Sedaris is going to be awesome because her character in the show is fucking incredible. But exploring this sort of, empty, old or destroyed civilization, like that shot where he's in the cavern and you see the big city below, it like reminded me. Again, I'm going back to video games, so I'm just showing how much of a nerd I am. But it's like there's a couple of in the Dark Souls series, there's a couple of shots like that where you see this sort of just old ancient civilization that has been completely ruined, and it's just this big open area for you to explore and dangers around every corner, blah blah blah. I don't think that the one thing that did bother me about that episode was that we had to do it twice. right? We had
Yeah.
Mandalorian.
Mm-hmm.
He got captured, and then Bo-Katan has to come in, and it's basically just the same thing. That was kind of a problem. I wasn't a fan of the big creatures.
The Muppets.
Yeah, for the amount of money they spend on these shows, those did not look good. However, the little robot brain creature or whatever, I thought was really well done.
Oh yeah,
And
with the eye.
I will say that Lindsay was like, "What is this? No. This is not a Star Wars. Whatever this thing is not a Star Wars." Like, she was very
Why? Too evil? Too mean? What?
I guess the whole, like, it's clearly a biological life form of some kind that's mostly turned into a robot, I guess. That's what I got from it. And so
That's kind of like Grievous, though.
well, yeah,
Grievous, yeah.
it put me in the awkward position of nerdly explaining to Lindsay who General Grievous was and what his deal was. So I was like, I can't do this, especially for a prequel movie. But I actually thought it was that scene where he gets captured and it's, driving that weird spider-looking thing. It kind of reminded me of some aspects of Aliens, like the way it was shot and like the color palette. So I thought it was, I could be completely off, but sort of a nod to that. And as for the third episode, I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was interesting. Like you said, kind of what do you do with these old Imperial folks? The one problem I had with it and it's kind of what you were saying, Donovan, I'm interested to see where they go with it, because that comms officer character, her asking the guy to leave the room so she could like fully melt this guy's brain or whatever.
Yeah.
What was the point of that? Is she just a sadist? Is she some sort of New Order spy? Because we know that the New Order is a thing in the newer movies, blah, blah, blah. I felt like that wasn't really totally explained.
Yeah, her 180 is just kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It's like, why string him along this long if you're just...
You get a sense that they're going to try to tie that to the last set of prequels. Last set of movies.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, is she spying for the New Republic to like root out potential, malcontents? Which, if that was the case, this is kind of like an FBI situation, entrapment, where like this guy didn't seem to be someone who was, raring for the Empire to come back. She just kind of fucked him over on purpose. That's why I think the more likely scenario is that she's someone who is like spying for whatever's left of the Empire and is trying to get rid of people who were formerly Imperial and then were valuable that would help the New Republic.
There is that image of a mythosaur, which I leave that kind of stuff for our guys on the podcast. We are Star Wars. That's kind of the stuff for them. But I will say this show is banking on me to care a lot about the whole, does he get to take off his helmet or not? And I am in camp, take off the goddamn helmet. I'm horny for Pedro Pascal. And let the man breathe. He needs a snack. You know what I mean?
Awkwardly lift up his helmet to drink too.
That was great.
I was like, I really wanted to just be able to give him a straw, and he just like.
Yeah, did they not have straws in this galaxy? That's my thing. I think that's my big complaint. Episodic action. I'm for it. It's fun. I tune in every week. I love the visuals. It's fantastic. It can get granular. It seems like that's what it wants to do. It took a hint from Andor and it wants to do that now. Favreau and Dave Filoni probably saw Andor and said, "Oh, we can do that shit." But just let Pedro Pascal breathe for a minute. The man's a fantastic actor. Don't keep him in a helmet. And I don't know that I care a lot about the whole, I can't take off my helmet, I want to bathe in the waters of Mandalore. I don't know that I care so much about that. I mean, I'm much more interested in him having adventure, I guess.
Well, they could be setting up, and I don't know if they're going to, I mean, it's Disney, they're going to play it safe, but like the conversation between like religious fanaticism and someone who's jaded by that, there's potential there. I'm not sure they're going to take it in any meaningful direction, though.
Yeah,
it's a little repetitive right now.
I just can't stop thinking about how if Grogu is supposed to be like who he's training up to be a Mandalorian, how are they going to make a helmet for that kid?
Yeah, there's that too.
I couldn't stop thinking about that during episode 2. Like, how are those ears going to fit in a Mandalorian helmet?
They're going to have one of those stupid little Boba Fett creatures make them a helmet. Tie it all together.
So
All right. Final thoughts on Mando?
Well, I wanted to ask y'all. You may have discussed it already, but like I was totally here for just the completely flippant dismissal of Gina Carano's absence.
Loved it. Yeah. Yeah. But I'm appreciative of the fact that they even included a line about it.
I guess.
Give me something, I guess.
I guess so. It's like it would have just been funny if like Carl Weathers had been like, she was dishonorably discharged for being transphobic.
Yeah. That would have been.
We don't tolerate that in the New Republic.
Would have been better there. Yeah, it's fun enough. Yeah, sure.
I guess I got to go back and watch fucking Boba Fett now.
Well, at least 2 episodes,
Well,
maybe 3.
I remember y'all had I guess a season 2 recap episode, and Donovan said this show has a Baby Yoda problem. And so I've been wondering, how are they going to fix that? And then I see the new Mandalorian. We just ignored it. Brought him back anyway.
Yeah, the big question for me coming into this season is how much Baby Yoda can I tolerate? And I think my tolerance has grown a little.
Well, he's out there doing Jedi shit now, so.
I'm okay with him a little bit.
He's halfway useful this time.
It's still too cutesy for me, but okay.
And that's the only reason Lindsay watches it. I mean,
it really.
Anytime we get a situation where Baby Yoda is eating snacks, that's premium content for Lindsay.
Yeah.
It's just the baby noises for me. It's too much.
Yeah, it's high time for this son of a bitch to learn words.
Or just like the goo goo gaga stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed.
Dude, that's me. All right. Well, thank you for Josh for dropping by, and he and Natalie may duck out because Donovan and I are going to talk 2 episodes of Perry Mason. Very nice to have you, Josh. Come join us again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun, guys.
Yeah, it really was. All right. See ya. Donovan, I can't explain to you how shocked I was to hit play on this Amazon Prime show. No, excuse me, Apple TV Plus show, Extrapolations. And the first episode had Matthew Rhys as just an evil entrepreneur. And I was like, what? That sad face Matthew Rhys?
That is great.
Dude, it blew me away. So that happened to me this weekend, and it was fresh off watching an episode of Perry Mason.
He has made a whole career off of those doe eyes of his.
Yeah, well,
did you watch The Americans?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, big fan. Big fan of The Americans.
Just everything in that final episode is just Matthew Rhys' sad face.
Yeah, for sure.
The carrying it all.
He's stellar. He makes Perry Mason worth watching, of course. But this show's got a lot going on. I think it's good quality, dare I say, adult drama. Right? It's noir, of course.
Yeah.
Leaning heavily on that. Are you a fan of the first 2 episodes of this new season?
I think I would put it like if a show like The Americans or Mad Men or Breaking Bad is like top tier. Those are A pluses. This is right below that. This is a B or a B plus. It's got a lot of elements that I really like. It's also hard for me to put my finger on like why it's not launched into the stratosphere for me.
It does. The show breathes a little.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that first episode back. I'm not going to say boring because I really wasn't bored, but it does allow for some longer scenes than maybe you see in your standard television show. You get just some characters maybe saying a couple extra things you normally don't see. Am I right? Is that the thing?
I would agree with you that it does breathe.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's
It's
bad.
paced a little slower, but there's still some intrigue because it's 100% a mystery, a whodunit. That's part of it, just like last season was. Who did it and why?
Yep.
And there's more to come. They're gonna add more because we're not even 3 episodes deep. They're gonna add some dashes of new characters involved. But
I am glad that they didn't play around with like Perry Mason doesn't do criminal cases for too long, because it's like we want to see, when he it was kind of like when he breaks into the car and he starts measuring everything. It's like return to form.
yeah,
And I was glad to see that.
Oh yeah, that's if you like detective shows where they are taking a tape measure and seeing how far a bullet will have traveled, this is it. This is your show.
And I think something about the way I can't put my finger on it. Something about the way Matthew Rhys just sells it. Like when he's in the prison with the two brothers, and there's something about the way he's like, "Hey, I'm trying to help." That just makes the scene utterly compelling. In a way that, like, it's not like that Tom Clancy nerd shit where it's like,
Yeah, it's not hard nosed. He's not saying. He's saying it with care.
yeah,
That's what it amounts to, and it's all in Matthew Rhys. Had you cast a couple other actors here, it's going to fall flat. But luckily, it's good casting on his part.
Yeah,
What about Julia Rylance? Her character, I thought in that first episode we're just going to have her doing a love triangle, this kind of thing, and I was a little worried. I think it might go further than that. What she does is going to go a little further. I think she's good, though.
She is good. I do think that sometimes, maybe this is why it's not top tier for me, because, and this is going off of 2 episodes, so it's really not fair. But sometimes when it isn't focused on Perry, it's a little bit unsure of what it wants to do with its characters.
I agree with that.
And I think
a little
that,
shaky.
I think that goes for her, and I think it goes for the ex-policeman, the spy.
Yeah,
Not the spy, the detective.
Paul.
Yeah. And maybe it's just their scenes are a little longer than they need to be or something like that. Like,
they seem more certain of what they want to do with the character of Paul, though. And I do like his. The ones with Julia Rylance it's still not clear to me, and so when it becomes less fuzzy, I think I'll be. But I just like seeing her as an actress. She's got some sort of charisma, I suppose.
I think it's set up to be interesting. I don't know if it's gonna actually do it, but her relationship with the DA,
Hamilton,
especially, this is obviously they're railroading these guys, and I don't know. I think like she could be in a place to do an interesting exploration of justice, where the DA is kind of the cynical side. We're just, like Matthew Rhys says, just like our founding fathers intended, or forefathers.
I was going to say, speaking of her character, have they put themselves in a bit of a rut by it's gonna be really hard to unravel and show lesbian love during that time period, because that would not have been a thing that would have been in the open. Like, everything's got to be behind closed doors for her. It's gonna be rough.
Yeah.
Does Hamilton, the DA, does he know she's gay?
I think
he brought her as a date.
Because he's gay.
Oh,
she
is he?
knows. I'm pretty sure.
So he brought her as a beard.
I think so. I'm pretty sure he's gay. I might be making that up completely.
Yeah, I don't know. I wondered that during the episode. I couldn't remember. Let's get into the actual murder.
All right.
We've got the millionaire son. He wants to bring a baseball team to L.A. I love the timeliness of it.
That was kind of fun.
That is fun. That's his big boast. I'm going to bring a baseball team to L.A. His dad is like, chill the fuck out, dude. I don't know if we can do it. So his dad had him murdered, right? That's where this is going.
I mean, they certainly want you to think that, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like, who... I mean, and in the first episode, it's a little, he's what was it, Brooks, whatever his name is.
Brooks McCutcheon.
That's right, but Brooks McCutcheon is kind of enough of a, like, scoundrel that it's like, okay, maybe there are, like, other people who could be gunning for him, and then in episode 2, he's cooking the books with that crummy ship of his, but, his dad, both... well, especially the second episode, it goes right back to his dad, and so I think they want you to think that for now, at least.
They do want you to think that. There'll be more. They're pretty good writers for the show.
Yeah,
and they tend to. What I really admire about it, beyond Matthew Rhys's performance and the noir feel, it's twofold. One, when I watch this show, I really feel like of a time and place. That's so well done. I feel transported. And the second thing is they tend to use all their characters. So, like Sean Austin's character, the grocer, he's going to come into play somehow. You just know that there's something involved with. It may be slight, but he'll be used.
Once again, apropos of nothing, but does like Sean Austin as the grocer not look a little bit like Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows?
A little bit.
Every time I see him, I'm like, oh, it's Guillermo.
Well, Sean Austin has managed to become the middle-aged actor now.
He's a beloved icon.
Yeah, he is. He was in Stranger Things as the dad, or not a dad, but dad figure. Yeah, I was real upset when he got killed in Stranger Things.
I do agree with, at least I think we saw it in the first season, where I agree with you, they use all their characters.
Yeah, and in this case, he's being used as Perry Mason's getting back into criminal law, but he's going to use him to fund the criminal because he's probably not going to charge the young men who've been accused.
He is a little bit, Sean Austin's character is a little bit of like, we're heading off this complaint before you even start complaining about it. Like, here's how Perry has money to do this.
Yeah, smart move.
What did you think about the mother from the first season killing herself?
The Dodson,
that's right. What did you think about that?
I didn't give it a lot of thought because I felt as if it was just, since they've moved on from that storyline, it was simply a tool to allow Perry Mason to feel utter regret for not being there for her completely, 100%, only doing the job of a lawyer and not the job of a human fully. You know, it's just that. Did you have an opinion on that?
I don't know that I did. I think part of it's going to depend on how quickly he gets over it. Because, like, is it going to be just sort of a plot point in these first 2 episodes where, you know, Perry's depressed, and then he gets a new case and it kind of perks him up? Or is it actually going to haunt him with his new case? Because, you know, they come to him, the family comes to him because of the Dodson case. And is it, you know, I hope it's more than just a plot point.
I like that and I'd like to see it done more, that they talk about he's a war vet. I like that a lot. They did that a lot in the first season, so they might not try to milk it as much. But I appreciate that. It feels real to someone of his time. So, yeah, I'm all in on this show. It's so good. Like I said, it puts me in Los Angeles right before the Depression.
It does
right
do
around the Depression.
That Chinatown thing. I'm not saying it's as good as Chinatown, but where you're absolutely right. Like, it transports you into this world, this noir world that has informed the world that we live in.
They have an opportunity to do good things with race,
yes,
immigration, and things.
Yes,
and
they were taking that up a little bit in the first season. So it'll be interesting to see how far they go, especially with race and immigration.
Yeah, it might be one of those things where they're a little too stuck in the time period they're writing about. Same thing with Julia Rylance's character being gay. And how much can you mess with that when the time period wouldn't really allow for it realistically?
Right. That makes sense. You know, like, how much would people... And they do some subtle stuff with race, but, like, how much would people think that there's anything unusual about the way the Paul is treated?
I think they do okay things with black and white race. Immigration is going to be the immigration of Mexican American.
Yes.
Or just, and I think they say they were born in America.
Yes,
right?
they've
make
never
that
been
point.
to Mexico.
That's good. Yeah, that's a really good point.
And then they talk about, you know, because the DA's assistant is like, they're a flight risk to Mexico. Like, well, they've never been to Mexico.
And he says they'll blend right in. Right?
Doesn't he say go on another killing spree?
Racist? Yeah. I recommend the show. It's especially if you like a little hard-boiled detective kind of thing. If you're missing that in your television, I say watch it. It's that first season was really good. Second season seems really promising too.
Yeah, I'd agree. I don't think that this may be damning it with faint praise, but I don't think that the second season has made any kind of serious missteps. Like, it's trending upwards. All signs look promising, and I want to be around to see what happens. You know, there's enough interest with the mystery that it's like, okay, what's going to happen next?
Certainly. Their showrunner is new this year. So, yeah, the showrunners, it's plural, are the same people who did The Nick, which had a lot of critical praise. So and they also another genre bit of, time period bit of television, which is got nothing but great praise. I haven't watched it.
Oh, it's fantastic. There's a little bit of, this is about the Nick, not about Perry Mason. There's a little bit of like, the characters are almost so fully realized that they're unsympathetic, if that makes sense.
Like, what do you mean?
They, like, Clive Barker's character, not Clive Barker, that's the author, Clive Owen?
Clive Owen.
It is Clive Owen. Okay, yeah, Clive Barker's the horror author who I don't like. He's got so many facets to him where, like, he's a brilliant surgeon, but he's, and it seems like it does more than just the, like, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing, where it's like, here's his good thing and here's his bad thing. He's a brilliant surgeon, but he's addicted to heroin, and between the two, between being a brilliant surgeon, maybe what I mean is not so fully realized, but he kind of feels like a real character.
In a way?
Do what?
Nuanced in a way?
Yeah, and
very human.
In a way that's like, I would say it's not trying to, it may be, but it's not trying to tug at your heartstrings.
Yeah, sure.
It's kind of, it comes across as kind of cold.
Huh.
But the characters are still very realized, and I think the coldness is a byproduct of their world.
That's interesting. Perry Mason still has a heart, so
yes, I would disagree with Matthew Rhys is the beating heart of Perry Mason right now.
Yep, worth your time. If you made it this far, thank you. I know our show ran a little long today, but that's the nature of the beast. With so much to talk about. Next week, I bet we'll talk Ted Lasso, maybe Lucky Hank. Maybe. That's the end of our show this week. We will continue conversation on Instagram and Twitter with Taking It Down Pod, at Taking It Down Pod, one word. The whole podcast network, The Alabama Take. You can keep up with us on social media with The Alabama Take, or just thealabamatake.com. Visit us, let us know what you think. We'll talk to everybody next week.